Does corrective exercise actually work? Welcome to the Pain Free Training Show. I'm your host, Jeff, co founder of the Exercise Therapy Association, and I'm here with our head of education, Brendan Fox. There's no shortage of hot takes in the industry on corrective exercise. We're here to gain clarity today on what exactly is corrective exercise and does it actually work? All right, Brendan, before we dive into the research, can we start with what does the term corrective exercise mean? What is corrective exercise?
Sure. I think I would change the question, if I may, to what is a corrective? Because it's not just exercise, sometimes it's a stretch or some other modality. Essentially, what these are, they are techniques designed to restore harmony in the body, to restore proper posture and proper function, which can help reduce aches and pains. In some cases, it's a very targeted exercise for a weak link in the body. In some cases, it's a stretch for an overactive or short and tight muscle in the body. Essentially, correctives bring us back into harmony so that we can move better, think better, feel better, and live our best life.
That's amazing. So instead of focusing on the fact that it's just exercise, it can actually be a variety of modalities that we're using in order to correct alignment or correct function. That's what you're saying,
Yeah, and
right?
I think that's often overlooked is you can't just go with stretches necessarily. You can't just go with exercises necessarily. That's like saying I'm only going to use sugar and no salt ever in any of my cooking. In order to be most effective, the human body requires a more holistic approach through correctives.
Okay, that's good. That provides some clarity to this. I think that in our industry, people get in a certain mindset about what a corrective exercise is or what a corrective is. And they look at it as like, well, it means like band pull aparts or it means, one thing. But it sounds like we have to open up our definition a little bit.
Yeah, context matters, right? So band pull aparts can be corrective when somebody's shoulder blades are too far apart and they have a lot of dysfunctions from that. However, if somebody has a case of adducted scapula, in that context, band pull aparts drive them further into their dysfunction. One of the main problems I see is that people oversimplify this. They think here's a corrective for the shoulder, here's a corrective for the back or the hips. In some cases, it might serve a corrective function. In some cases, it might actually be enabling and worsening an existing dysfunction. That's where discernment comes in and makes all of the difference.
That leads to my next question, which is you've used the term corrective exercise recipe in the past. And so, what is the key difference between using a corrective exercise recipe and the other methodologies of using corrective exercise that are out there?
Yeah, the cooking analogy really helps people grasp what we're talking about here. Correctives are simply ingredients. A corrective recipe is a sequence of the proper ingredients in the proper order and the proper dosage to get a specific beneficial shift in the body. The corrective recipes are all designed for very specific postural patterns that show up in the body that are associated with aches, pains, and dysfunction. So it's all about knowing what are the sequence of movements, exercises, and stretches that are very targeted that can help resolve this postural issue or that postural issue. And we need to treat it like recipes. You need to have all the proper ingredients there or it doesn't work. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes people have shoulder blades that are too high. Okay, they're wearing their shoulder blades up on their ears, and that can create a pinching on the suprascapular nerve. All right. Now, some people might say, well, you just need to stretch your upper traps. Okay, that's fine. Maybe that helps a little bit. That's a corrective stretch right there. However, the upper traps are not the only muscle that elevates the scapula. You're leaving out the levator scapula muscle. So if you stretch the upper traps, you're not likely to get as good of an outcome compared to loosening them both up, especially if they're both tight. Furthermore, we need to tighten up the lower traps and some of the muscles that'll pull the shoulder girdle down in order to create lasting results. So I think if we're just going to raise our standards on everything, then recipes are the way to go because they're more holistic. And in my experience, they get far better outcomes and it just makes sense.
Yeah, I guess that's where you might get into where if you had only one ingredient, but you were missing other ingredients of the recipe, someone gets some temporary relief, but then the problem keeps coming back, right?
Yeah, we don't get the lasting results. Hence the reason we have a pain epidemic going on in the world right now. We have more health professionals than ever in human history, and more people that are seeking some sort of an effective, lasting solution for aches and pains and are struggling to get it.
I love this idea of the recipe ingredients. And the reason why is because, when you think about making some sort of recipe, all ingredients are good. Like onions are good, chocolate is good, flour
Mhm.
is good, but in the right recipe, right? Like if you were going to make a chocolate cake, I wouldn't necessarily include onions in it. Maybe, I don't know if you would, but I wouldn't necessarily include onions in it.
Depends who I
Okay.
was serving it to.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with the ingredient of onions. It just doesn't belong in that recipe. Right. And the reason I love this concept is because, sometimes you'll see someone on Instagram or some famous person in the industry saying, oh, this is the worst exercise ever. Never do this exercise. Or this is the worst thing ever. Never do this. This is terrible. Right. But it seems a little bit unsophisticated to say this exercise is never good. There's got to be situations where that exercise is applicable, just the same way that there are recipes where onions are applicable. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we don't want to be too narrow-minded because what's happening in the fitness industry with a lot of the influencers on social media is it's just the high school rumor mill all over again. Here's a rumor, never do this. Here's a rumor, this doesn't work, this works. Here's a rumor, if you have back pain, you need to just stretch your glutes and hamstrings and that's it. It's just people spreading rumors. It lacks critical thinking.
Absolutely. Love that. The high school rumor mill. Okay, so let's get into some of the research. What is the research saying around corrective exercise? I know that there's people that are quoting like, hey, corrective exercise doesn't work. There's research that's saying it does. Can you help us provide some clarity here?
Yeah, so the research is mixed. We're getting mixed results and mixed points of view. And in my opinion, there's a number of reasons for that. For example, in the studies that suggest that the correctives don't work, I would feel the same way if I was considering what they used as correctives, which I absolutely do not. So what happens is the research is very one dimensional. Okay. Take, for example, back pain, which is something they research on. They are just looking for a strict correlation to optimizing biomechanics and posture and improving back pain. Here's the thing, posture and alignment matters, biomechanics matter, targeted exercise matters, but it's not the total picture as implied by the format of the research. There needs to be some lifestyle modification. There needs to be mental harmony. Sometimes back pain comes from constipation. The problem here is that there is not one generalized back pain the way that they are treating it as such. They are lacking the discernment to break people into the different categories and apply the appropriate corrective for the unique issues leading to back pain, right? So in my opinion, the research is too one dimensional to really tell the truth of matters. In my opinion, also, it can be very unenlightened, the approach. They think that correlation equals correction. For example, I once heard an expert talk about if you have any knee issue, just do leg extensions. That is a corrective, right? And I think you might have mentioned me tell this story before. And I'm like, if you are defining that as a corrective just because it's for that body part, then yeah, correctives don't work by your definition of what a corrective is, which is simply any exercise for that body part. It's not that simple. We need to understand the underlying reason for the issues in the first place, which are not necessarily what a leg extension machine addresses. It's not often weak quads, right? The research is mixed, and the reason for that is that more enlightened research is needed, more holistic research is needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. I heard one doctor who was talking about just research in general and said, if you're going to quote research, you got to go back and look at was actually done in the research, not just the conclusion, right? Because it's easy on Instagram, you're talking to someone else to quote, oh, this article said this, and this was the summary of it. But you have to go back and actually look at the research and say, does it actually prove that, or is that just a hot take? I know nutrition's run into this problem. They've done research and it says a certain thing, but when you go back and look at the modality of it, it was a self-reporting study and it wasn't 100% accurate. And so we always want to go back and look at this research before we start quoting it as, the gospel of what's true.
Yeah, and I don't normally like to gossip and trash talk people, but I do want to call one fitness and health professional out on doing this myself. I used to do this in the beginning of my career, actually. I used to be like, show me the studies, where there's a research paper on that. And I used to like scour through the Journal of Strength and Conditioning and everything else, get them delivered to my house. I'd have a highlighter. And then it hit me square in the face, the realization that research does not equal undeniable truth. Science is a work in progress and it's doing the best job it can. The problem is when we demand too much from the scientific community and we expect them to be these oracles of ultimate truth. Science is not done yet. More research is needed on many things. It does have these specialized silos of established wisdom, but a lot of these aches and pains are in the gaps. More research is needed before they can give a firm stance on any of this stuff, because at some point we got to roll up our sleeves and get real world results, and we got to go into the unknown because they don't have a study for everything out there, and they don't have a study for your unique client and the issues they have. So we've got to just use this as a basis for our experimentation with what works in the real world.
So a good key takeaway for the people tuning in is, there is some mixed research out there on corrective exercise, but better research is needed, more in-depth, more specific research to the modalities being used in today's current world in order to see if, in order to get anything that's more reliable. So that's very
Yeah, and
helpful.
one of the things that is firmly established is the benefits of stretching and exercises, the unique ingredients of corrective recipes. It's all about organizing which beneficial stretches and exercises do we put in which order, in which circumstance to get the best outcomes. That's all this is. And that's not a far stretch. That is just prescribing exercise with greater scrutiny and greater customization. That's all corrective recipes are. And the body will tell you the score. Every time we do a case with somebody, we are running our own scientific experiment. We do a before test, we apply a corrective recipe, and then we do an after test. We're applying the scientific method every time. So this is being responsible with how we conduct ourselves professionally and even intellectually. But the research just hasn't verified every little detail about what we're doing yet.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the motive might be behind someone coming out on social media or saying, corrective exercise doesn't work, it's all a bunch of garbage?
Yeah, I mean, people will say anything for attention, just like they did in high school, right? You got to remember that their intention is your attention,
Mm,
okay? It is not giving you ultimate truth, because somebody simply could not overgeneralize a statement like that and have sincerity and integrity at the same time. And people may say things like this. They might say, well, corrective exercises don't work. You can't say that and hold that opinion if you've actually studied the facts. Because if somebody actually studied what we do and seen the results we get and experienced it firsthand, they would not be making comments like that at all, right? We are big on truth through experience. Don't even take what we say as ultimate truth on anything. We're going to encourage you to run your own experiments and keep your eyes of reason open so you yourself can see what's true.
okay, so coming back to the corrective exercise recipe, how does that differ from some of the other modalities in the industry, maybe MAT, muscle activation techniques, or fascial stretch therapy, or trigger point? What are some of the key differences between that?
Well, I mean, first, I want to honor what's out there. I don't argue with anything that gets results. If you're getting true and lasting results, you have my blessings, by all means. There might be some systems that focus on one corrective ingredient type. It might be all about stretching, for example, or might be all about exercising, for example, right? And that could be considered a modality. And I think as an ingredient, it's great. But if that's the case, we don't want to make it an end point. It is something you can apply as part of a big picture in order to create a beneficial shift. So I think the key here is a lot of people are selling corrective ingredients as though they are corrective recipes from my
Mm.
experience. So, for example, I've experienced some people who just stretch people out all the time and they're missing the exercise piece. So, what happens? People don't develop resilience. You're not strengthening a weak link, you're just relaxing and releasing overly active, tight tissue. That's only part of the equation. So, if you want to create codependency and have your client pay you and see you forever, maybe that's a good plan for you. But if you actually are here for the right reasons and you want to help people and help them even better, we need complete solutions if that's the case.
Yeah, so it sounds like one of the key differences here is, moving from a single modality and having the power and the recipe being in it includes a variety of modalities into it. And that's what's creating these great transformation.
Exactly. I mean, when I went through in my learning journey and I started with over 30 certifications, then I stopped counting from there. I would realize, okay, I can use Tibetan acupressure and I did some training in that, but it doesn't give a complete solution. At some point, I have to strengthen people's muscles. At some point, I have to alter their lifestyle and help them with mindset. But there are a couple Tibetan acupressure moves that can help to restore posture in specific ways. And if I combine them with the proper stretches and exercises, I can get a beautiful result. So in my educational journey, I found that I went around and I was just getting a salad of correctives and a salad of assessments. It was just a mixed salad, and there was no rhyme or reason on how to properly put it together. And when there was, it was very unenlightened and overly simplistic. Sure, if somebody has a shoulder issue, just give them all the shoulder stretches we taught you, right? Here's a whole ton of stretches. Somebody has a shoulder issue, start there. And I'm like, well, that's not really customizing, right? That's a one size fits all solution. That's not very enlightened. And you try that out in the real world, and after a while, you realize it doesn't give lasting results.
For the past 10 years, exercise therapy has been teaching the corrective exercise recipes that you built. Can you tell us a little bit about how you built these recipes and how you know that they work?
Yeah, there was 3 steps to it. Number 1 was I was beyond obsessed with research and learning. And I mean beyond obsessed. I would get books, I would highlight and then type out the notes from every book I read. I stopped counting at 700. Okay. I would spend all the money I could leverage to take any courses that I thought might help me learn. So I got beyond obsessed with collecting information, but I realized it's just information. And what I wanted was powerful, actionable wisdom. And that seemed to be lacking. There wasn't as much of that out there. So what I did was I took all of this and I applied my understanding of anatomy and I ran experiments in the real world in real time with real people who had aches and pains. Okay. And I did it with great strategy and intention. Okay. If this postural pattern is associated with a tight TFL, I need an ingredient for that. Let me try this ingredient, see how well it works in this recipe. Oh, it didn't work because getting somebody to foam roll their TFL, if it's a member of the general public, they're often, even though you teach it to them, they don't do it properly on their own. It's just too nuanced. And sometimes they don't have their foam roll. Okay, let me substitute in another ingredient. Okay, percussions work. Clients can figure it out. You're percussing your side pocket. You can do it anywhere. So I went through this process of refinement over many, many years. And then when I did find a corrective recipe that worked and worked reliably, I would park it and say, okay, I'm not allowed to use that now. Now I have to start again from scratch and build a new one. And so I would try to always find new, better ways to create beneficial shifts in the body. So I would try this time and time again. And then eventually, the human body is very consistent no matter where in the world you are. So eventually, once you can identify these patterns, these recipes that have taken many, many years in the front lines being battle tested, they produce reliable, powerful results. as evidenced by the fact that we have people all around the world using them and creating wow factor with people. But there was no magic to it. And I believe anyone could have done what I did if they just put in the hard work that I did to gain clarity. I just had high standards and I wasn't going to settle with status quo results that we see in mainstream health and fitness. To me, that wasn't good enough. I don't want to be here and then just be struggling with my ignorance and lack of results here. So, and I just kept an open mind. I decided to stay curious. I can always find a new and better way to do things. And so when you take the exercise therapy courses, you're really getting the greatest hits of my entire life's work here,
Yeah,
and
that's
this is
amazing.
over 30,000 hours one-on-one with clients, testing things out, making case studies, seeing what works in the real world with the body. In the end, it wasn't my university education or any of the courses or books I read that educated me. Nobody gave me an education like my real world clients and their bodies and how their bodies responded to each and every one of my experiments. That's where my real education came from.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece is that in any industry, there's a point where the book learning or the theory kind of ends and the real world experience and the real world learning has to take over, right? So there's only so much stock we can put into theory. That theory has to work in the real world as well, too.
Yeah, and I have a good line because people might be like, they might say, well, this book says do this, and this study says this. That's great. That's all just information. Just information. Just information will not take you all the way there. There is much more understanding that goes beyond surface level information. The human body is much more multidimensional than what this information is suggesting. That's why we need to see what's getting results in the real world.
So, what would you say to people that see the corrective exercise get performed and it restores function and you have a better after within minutes? And they're saying, well, this is just temporary. That's going to wear off. What would you say to the people that have that sort of opinion?
If they say it in that context, I would agree with them and say, yeah, you're right. We're not done yet. But we never said we were done, right? So when we do these correctives, we are creating a beneficial shift. That is part of a total solution. And we've helped the client establish the beneficial shift. Now, the client then has homework to reinforce the shift. It does take 6 to 8 weeks for a true and lasting change in muscle and tendon length. That's on our handouts. Okay, so it might look, if you're only taking a small point of view and observing what we do, it's easy to dismiss it and be narrow-minded about it and just write it off. Oh, that's just temporary. But the issue is we agree with you, and that's why we prescribe homework, right? Things people do on their own. And so that's part of it. A lot of it comes down to the client creating their own self-directed healing breakthroughs. And we tell them, look, we've created a beneficial shift. If you want this to become the new normal in your body, which countless times it has for many of the people that have seen us, and we've got stacks of testimonials where people resolved an issue and it didn't come back, then you have to do the work. You have to do the work. Because if it looks too good to be true, if you only look at that assessment and corrective applied one time, then it is. Yes, there's more work that follows this, but nobody wants to see that. We're not showing that necessarily when we're sharing on social media.
Yeah. So the corrective is creating a beneficial shift. It's showing the client what's possible. It's getting their buy-in, but obviously more work is needed. They now need to come back and see their trainer, see their coach, reinforce this shift over time. And if we implement that corrective recipe over a long period of time, it can create that long-term change.
Yeah, there can be a remodeling inside the body. There can be a new adaptation of movement patterns. There can be, a new baseline in their stress levels. There can be lasting shifts that happen in the human body as demonstrated through various phases of human development, right? We are providing stimulus that is directing the body towards a very specific type of adaptation that will unlock these functional and mobility and movement benefits for them.
So if we actually look at one of the corrective exercise recipes that you built, you don't see like the assisted stretching in there. You don't see barbells or fancy stuff in there. It's a lot of body weight stuff. Can you speak to how you decided to include these ingredients?
Yes, my greatest teacher My clients taught me that. It all came down to compliance doing their homework. Okay. So in the beginning, I'm going to call myself out again here and some of the dumb mistakes I did early in my career. And so I would mix in a whole bunch of equipment and make things fancy, bring in the barbells really early and, just make things fancy and impressive. And you can get results that way. Okay. You can. The problem is that it becomes much more challenging for clients to repeat that recipe on their own because they need access to these things. And if the movements themselves are very complex, they're more likely to get confused and do it wrong on their own. So over time, as I grew up a little bit here, I started to evolve my approach. So I decided I'm going to give like the simple no frills solutions. And then if we want to, once we establish consistency, then we can get fancier and mix it up with some of these other techniques. And I thought, as we're teaching this in the Exercise Therapy Association, my goal is to give very convenient, do anywhere solutions. However, I am setting it up for all of you to be the hero and show how much more exciting and interesting you can make it when your clients meet with you. That's up to you, and you can take some of these and give substitute ingredients whenever you want, provided it's doing the same thing. My priority was not to give the best corrective ingredient for every single thing. It was to give the most convenient, yet also effective corrective ingredient. I need to start there because we need consistency in order to get results. We can get fancy later on.
Yeah, that's a great point because if the client doesn't do it, it's not going to create the change. And that makes us look bad because our clients are our business card, right? If they're still in pain, whether it's our fault or not, they're going to blame us, right? And so you have like the gym version they can do with you, and then you have the at home version that they can do simply, which
Sure, sure.
increases results, makes you look better as a health and fitness professional, and it drives in more referrals to you, right?
Hmm.
So you created these corrective exercise recipes and you've had success with them in a variety of settings, in a gym setting, in a clinic setting. You've used them with Olympic and pro athletes, but you're a group of one. So how do these recipes play out when you use them with much broader audiences? So as you're disseminating all these correctives to hundreds, maybe thousands of students, are they having success with them?
The great thing about this system is that it's easy to reproduce it and replicate it. And that comes down to the way the assessments are run. So if somebody has a dysfunction and something's giving out in the body, we shift their posture in a very specific way. And if that restores function, that then makes a specific corrective suggestion to you. So it's a very linear system in which if you just go through the assessments and follow the suggestions based on what's getting results, you should end up with the appropriate corrective experiments. And our experience with it has been this has been absolutely true. It has been true over in Hong Kong, in Malaysia. It has been true in the Netherlands, Germany, the UK, throughout the US, all across Canada. It doesn't matter where in the world people are applying this. We are getting tons of unsolicited testimonials about results people are getting with their clients. And tons of people have told us they are really building their career to the next level because of the success and results they're getting with their clients just following the system as it is. So the great thing is, it did start out with just me and I was just getting results and I was succeeding in a silo. But I knew that there was nothing special about me apart from other people, and that these are consistent patterns in the human body that have consistently reliable solutions, and that can be taught. And now, real world experience is verifying that.
I love that because I've taken a lot of courses where there's a lot of theory and you kind of got to figure out how to apply that theory. And what you're explaining here is, hey, if they respond to this functionally, you can reliably use this corrective exercise and expect to have good results with it. I love that as a solution. It makes the complicated more simple for the people that are building careers in the health and fitness industry.
Yeah, it makes it easy. We want people to win first. We want to help you get real world results fast and impressive results. And so that's what we lead with.
Well, we covered a lot of really powerful information here today. We gained some clarity on corrective exercise and the fact that maybe a little bit more research is needed in this area to help us come out with some more conclusive facts. And we differentiated between a corrective exercise and a corrective exercise recipe, and the fact that we're getting away from maybe a single modality and we're including all the modalities, because all the modalities are great, but when applied in the right recipe. And so the corrective recipes give us the power to use all the modalities in a more precise way so we can help more people and we can help them better. Let's give the everybody tuning in an actionable takeaway from today. Brendan, what do you think people should take out of today's discussion?
So we need a simple path forward, and here's the simple path. See who is getting real world results with real people and role model and learn from them. That's it. Because you're not going to find the trail to the promised land, finding all of these different terms and information and studies and stuff. See who's getting real world results and follow and role model and learn from them.
Outstanding. So to help all those health and fitness professionals get on their path to helping more people and helping them better, we have a free gift for you today. Click on the link and start unleashing your full potential today. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. For myself, from Brendan, from the entire exercise therapy team, we're here to help you win in your career.